When my parents split up at the age of about 10, 11, that's when I first kind of like felt like maybe we were going through money problems. I just felt like things weren't the same as before. Hello, I'm Giovanna. I'm a luxury and sustainable fashion consultant, co-founder of the Fashion Blueprint, which is the #1 community for the fashion entrepreneur. Growing up, I always felt a sense of abundance in my household, and that extended over all areas of our lives, including money. My parents were always the sort of people that would never come to your house empty-handed. They would always bring something along with them. And in the house, myself and my siblings always had like a lot of stuff. I felt like I grew up in abundance. But then when my parents split up at the age of about 10, 11, that's when I first kind of like felt like maybe we were going through money problems. I just felt like things weren't the same as before. That was the first time I actually remember thinking, ooh, money is a thing. Like it was my first time thinking of money as a concept. Okay, so in my teenage years, I really looked forward to reaching the age of 18 so I could finally work. Even in college, I actually was looking for part-time jobs. I just couldn't find one, maybe because it was part-time. But I really looked forward to being able to secure my first job so I could finally buy my own things. As I mentioned, so my parents had split up, and in your teenage years, that's when you want to go shopping and do stuff with your friends and stuff. But then you always have to justify the reason why you need money for things. So I really looked forward to getting my first job. When I did, I was actually surprisingly responsible with my finances. I'm not sure where that actually came from. I think as a person, I've always been really like organized and responsible. So maybe it was just a result of just being brought up in that way. I was really responsible at the start, but then that did change later in life. So I've gone through phases actually. So in my teenage years, always looked forward to gaining financial independence. When I did secure my first job, I was really responsible with it, always putting money aside and budgeting for the month. Then I would say in my early 20s, that's when I became a little bit more financially irresponsible to an extent. So I remember getting my first credit card when I was 20 something. I can't remember exactly how old. And I was really good with payments. So what did my bank do? They increased my allowance. In increasing my allowance, I think that kind of like made me think subconsciously that I just had more money to spend, which wasn't really the case because it's not really your money, it's the bank's money and you have to pay it back. So it was really hard at one point to really kind of make enough money to then pay back my credit card. I had to work really hard for it, so I wouldn't recommend it. But then in going through that in my early 20s, I then, having learned those lessons, I then became financially responsible again. And now I'm actually really good with money again. I always put money aside, I invest now, and I budget according to how much I make, and I don't overspend. So my investment journey actually started, I would say, when I was about maybe 24, 25. My brother's really good with just knowing about investment, what to put money in, and he really kind of like fed that through to me. He was the first person to introduce me to cryptocurrency, and this was like in 2017. So not a lot of people knew about it back then, or were really like putting money there at that time. So 2020 was actually a really good year for us, I guess, from an investment in cryptocurrency perspective. But then aside from that, a friend of mine, I guess during lockdown, a lot of people were doing things that they maybe had more time for. And a friend of a friend hosted a webinar on just financial freedom to an extent. And that's where she introduced me to different ways of investing, including index funds, which is now my preferred form of investment. In the way I envision my future, I would love to be able to generate generational wealth so that my children are able to just live freely without worrying about money. But in terms of my personal financial goals, it's just to be able to live life in my own terms. So generate as much income on a monthly basis or yearly basis to be able to do the things that I actually want to do with my time, rather than the things that I feel obliged to do to generate income. At present, I would say I'll get most of my information from like social media, maybe pages that I follow, or it could even be like articles. But I don't necessarily have a go-to person when it comes to finances. I've always felt like it's something that I didn't think a lot of people spoke openly about. So it's not something that I would go to my peers to discuss. I still feel like it's a very kind of like closed off subject. So I just go online to get my information. Looking back, I definitely wouldn't maximize my credit cards to a point where I couldn't really keep up with payments. Luckily, I managed to fix that early enough and not put myself in so much debt that I can't now, cover the basics. But that's definitely something that I would not do again going back.